Welcome to a new episode of Leaders Talk. My guest today is Professor Lutz Johanning, member of the core leadership team of WHU.
Write it down on a paper, that is one thing. And not only talking about that, but really do it. Experience that. Start with yourself, leading the me, leading we, the organization, and then work on behalf of societies, leading us, and making a whole learning journey out of that. And that requires these psychological leadership skills, coaching. And I think this is what people really look for and what is necessary in that kind of world that we live in.
Leaders Talk, the interview podcast portraying leaders who are committed to better leadership, better organizations, and a better world. Hosted by managing partner of Leadership Choices and co-founder of the Cosmic Foundation, Karsten.
Lutz is responsible within the core leadership team for executive education and for the platform of change makers, of businesses, of alums, supporting the school and building a more sustainable future and leaders for tomorrow. And he's also an avid sponsor of the Leading Together transformation program that took place within WHU for the last 2 years and is going on further. And together with him, I do a deep dive into the transformation, into the lessons learned, but also into his fascinating own career, his life story, what made a huge imprint on him and how he built a career on personal crises that he had to live through. And so let's get right into the conversation with Lutz Johanning. A very warm welcome to Leaders Talk. Welcome, Professor Lutz Johanning.
Thank you, Karsten, for being here.
Lutz, tell us about what you do and what do you do for work?
So I do for work, I'm a professor at the Otto Beisheim School of Management, or WHU, to be correctly in English. And there I'm professor for empirical capital market research, and I'm the associate dean of executive education and business engagement at that school for more than a year now.
Wow, that sounds very frightening to me because I'm a non-finance guy. But you refer to your passion as emotional finance. What are you referring to there?
Yeah. So first of all, empirical capital market research in first hand is, that is quite empirical, technical, capital markets, finance. So why emotional finance and what is that? So we often observe in capital markets, or especially in stock markets, for example, that you can explain quite a lot of prices with models, with pricing models. However, for example, in a crisis, something happens that you can only explain by psychology, panics, emotions. And from that observation, one stream of my work basically derived in terms of emotional finance. And emotional finance, what we do is it's beyond the typical behavioral finance, where you see basically cognitive biases that people have in decision making. We go a step further by analyzing the emotions of people, understanding the emotions, the personalities, understanding how these emotions and personalities play together in organizations or in markets, and what might be the results of biases on these market organizational level, and what might be the outcomes. And for example, as said before, panics are very important because in panics, a lot of value is destroyed, quite often more than it should be or it needs to be. And to understand these processes better, that is why we look at that discipline.
Wow. And you do this from a research perspective, you do this from a teaching perspective, but you also have quite an impressive background as an entrepreneur yourself, where that also played a role to a certain degree, right?
That's correct. Yeah, this is a little bit of what I'm still a little bit doing too, being an entrepreneur, but I did that much more in the last, let's say, 15 years, that we built a couple of companies together with former students and research assistants with a couple of companies in the field of capital markets. And of course, then their emotions play a role. For example, if you invest into stocks, one company is doing that, and you know a crisis will come, that is for sure. You do not know when. But for these crises that will come, you should have some rules how you behave in that crisis. Not to, for example, not to just follow the panic mode other people do. And if you can stop that and have a rule, then you can generate better successful performance than the average.
Okay. And knowing you a while now, I know that you would want to dedicate way more time into this research, but
Yeah, that's right.
you are co-leading the university as part of the core leadership team. What exactly is your role in the core leadership team, Lutz?
So, as I said before, for more than a year, I'm the Associate Dean, Executive Education and Business Engagement, which means I work on the executive offering that we have. This is programs like open programs that all people, basically, we address individual people to be part in our programs. For example, negotiations, transformation, leadership, strategy. And we have a customized unit where we talk to big companies or sometimes also smaller companies. And if they want to have like an executive transformation program for their executives, then we talk to these and conduct business or education formats for these. For these companies. Also, what is included is the EMBA program of our school, so Executive MBA, which we offer together with Kellogg. I think, Karsten, you are an alumni of that program.
Yes.
And because that is very close to executive education, what is in the focus is always how can we prepare executives for the next leading skill, strategy skill, for the next transformation change project. And in these times, change and transformation is the key topic to be open. And last but not least, my role also includes the business engagement. That is that we address companies for other formats, like, for example, we build centers in terms of thought leadership, and how can we cooperate with companies, with corporations, in terms of, this is a new way of coming out from research. How can we basically bring this research into practice, and what can we do there? And we have different formats at our school, for example, centers, and within that centers, we operate with these companies, and that is also part of my role.
Okay. And transformation is at the core of executive education these days. It is also at the core of WHU in itself, because WHU went through a transformation process that has at least two facets. One is, what is the mission and vision of WHU? And then also, how is the culture or the mindset working? Maybe let's start with the vision and mission. How would you describe that vision to us?
So first, I mean, when I joined last year, in summer, we were in talks, and I joined October last year. We sat together and said, look, we are working on a new vision. So what is the purpose of our school? And as we are really a home of change makers, so alums of our school are really extraordinary good entrepreneurs, building their own companies within organizations, in politics, people who are willing to take over responsibilities and really contribute to change. And seeing what is happening within the world, Europe, especially Germany, we are at a stage of tremendous change. Technology is changing, the geopolitical situation is changing tremendously. So there's a big need for people who take over in leadership roles and give origins and say, look, guys, this is the way we would go, and we are willing to do. I call this changing or transformation. And as we are a school, a home of these change makers already, we said this is the goal for the next, let's say, 10 years. Our vision is that we see a world that is changing so much, and we will contribute to this kind of world. Of course, we have special values in mind, European values, democratic values, freedom of speech, freedom of research, responsibility for each other. That is very important for us. And this is where we want to contribute. And also, this is our actions, but also our inactions, what we do not do and we could do as a school. So that is our vision, that we want to contribute to this transformational change that is on the stage in the world. And especially what is our mission within this vision is that we really want to empower change makers, define ourselves as a platform for change makers, so bring these people, organizations together, that we can really make something out of that, not only think, research, talk, education, but also do. So change that. And that is what we do. And for that, we need to integrate human and artificial intelligence to basically bring solutions to these challenges.
Okay. So there's multiple facets. It's kind of long-winded, but I think at the end of the day, it is about using entrepreneurial spirit to bring positive, sustainable change to Europe, to Germany, to the world.
Exactly, and we could have much more of that. Yes, but that is the core. And entrepreneurial mindset and spirit is not only people who build their own companies. These are also people who take over responsibility in larger companies in terms of CXO positions in NGOs, in the political arena. So people who are willing to take over responsibilities with the entrepreneurial mindset to move forward this world, to make a sustainable world out of that. Exactly, that is the objective.
And what I like about that is with this platform idea that you are leaving the traditional boundaries of a university. This is research and teaching, and that's it. That is really the partnership with other companies, with other institutions, with politics, with policies, right? That all of that is kind of combined.
Exactly. And if you just see, and Karsten, you're familiar with that as a WHU alum, you see the extraordinary network in the unicorn ranking of universities. We are number 5 worldwide. If you see that 10% of VC funding in Germany in the last 10 years has gone to WHU startups. If you see the number of CXOs in big firms in relative terms, WHU is extraordinarily high positioned in terms of number 1 in Germany. So we see that these people have done that. And the idea is bringing all these people back to our school and a lot of others. And then let's make the change and not only talk about that.
Yeah, and also give the change a direction, right? Because some of the CXOs and VC funding, I think, was in all sorts of directions, not necessarily for sustainability in the past, right? And I think that is the net new direction of how to say we give into innovation a direction.
And this is a very good point, because I think everybody, a lot of people, a lot of organizations, political parties want to change. However, the direction is not always clear. And here the direction is clear. It means we are business school. Of course, business is always involved, but also the values we are looking for. We stand for responsibility, integrity, curiosity. So for a forward-moving society, we do not need to move back, which means responsibility for all social groups and other countries' nationalities. Yeah. That is very important. So this direction, the origin, it's a key ingredient of that, and we have a clear idea what that is.
And in parallel to this process, actually earlier than this process, there was another process, another transformation process kicked off at WHU called Leading Together. And you joined it when it was already moving. You joined quite early, but still it was moving already. What were things that you heard about it when how did you first come across it?
Actually, I came across quite early because doing besides capital market, this emotional finance, it was always in my interest. So when it was announced, I read it and I talked to my colleagues and said, "Oh, who will participate?" So that is what I did in my previous role. The so if you see where it comes from, and that is pretty much reflected in the name, leading together. Our school has a tradition as the dean is the leader, and everything is centered around the dean. That was the origin. And when Christian Anders as the dean took over, I think he was in the podcast, Karsten, right? He said, "Look, this is not the idea. What we want to do, we want to lead together." And I think that is reflected as an emergent system organization that creativity, new ideas, innovation, culture can emerge much better in a system like that. And that is reflected in the name, and that is where effectively was the origin. Yeah.
And you probably heard, voices about this initiative because you came from the outside into the inside and became one of the sponsors and, in our language, stabilizers and protectors of the, the two loops process. When you came into that, what kind of voices did you hear from, people outside or inside of that movement?
A lot of inspiration, starting really ongoing because the whole organization was involved, not only key people or some people. The whole organization was involved, and that was really inspiring, enlightening. And that is what I heard at the same time when I joined was, of course, and I think this is part of this process. But what comes next? How precisely does it go? You start walking a path, and then you see, now I don't know exactly where I'm going. And this kind of question marks were already seen and could be felt at that stage. When I joined, I think that was last year in October.
Yeah. So motivation, inspiration on the one hand side, but on the other hand side, how do we resolve these obstacles that we unearth and that we now talk about, but what do we do about them?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Now there's one thing I think we need to explain to our listeners and viewers, and that is the particularity of a university, because there is freedom of research and teaching, and that is a very, very strong fundamental principle of universities, especially in Germany with the German history. How does that unfold, or how does that can be challenging sometimes when you want some sort of structural coherence in a university?
This is the challenge in general, because universities need this kind of freedom in research, freedom in teaching. And that is what it is. So you can't force anybody to this coherence. You can't enforce that. And that is, of course, always a topic where I think, and what we did in the process, we openly discussed that. I think that came on the table. And what my answer finally is that again, this is motivation, inspiration, because all these people look for purpose, orientation. And with a new vision, that is what we can say, it's really highly accepted. All people see that as something what is really, it's a good thing to do and surf for on this vision. And this is, I think, this kind of inspiration, that is where people like to go this path without forcing. And that is my answer to that. And we can see and observe that really a lot of colleagues voluntarily come and want to participate and contribute to that movement. And that is exactly what we want to inspire. It's not true, it's not finally done, but it's a long process from the idea, which is easily written on a paper. That is 10%, but 90% is walking the path. And that is what we do. Sometimes it's painful, yeah. But in total, it's very inspiring, and I'm absolutely happy about how many people are really following and contributing without asking sometimes.
And so what I hear you say is you can actually only lead by inviting people to join, by being open to them, but then also creating a movement. And that is the idea of that two loops model, to identify pioneers in all job families that actually have that urge for, I do want to collaborate, I do want to work on eye level, I do want to be collegial, I don't want that hierarchical distance from the 60s anymore. And so only we can create excellence, and to bring them together and give them another platform actually, to see what's happening if that gets created.
That is exactly, and to be, to act personally as a role model, to do the same and see, look, independent of that, of whatever it is, the idea is important, and building stages for others. That is how I consider my role. And that is also what helped the process tremendously, because I got to know the organization, especially because of my entrepreneurial work. I was not always fully part of this university. So I got to know a lot of people, and very supportive people, and bringing that together in terms of our idea, of our vision mission. And that is what we need to do. We need to live the change maker attitude ourselves. And that is the best way you can authentically lead an organization, or being part of a leadership team here.
And part of the work and leading together were large group initiatives or large group formats where we came together with 50, 60, 70 people, academics, professional staff coming together. And we were working in a very unconventional way for university standards, I would say. So how would you describe that to somebody who hasn't been there?
That's right, because we formed the groups in different formats. Sometimes there was a voluntarily choose to what group they got. Sometimes we selected the people and working together, but independent of roles, really, from different areas of the school, professors, professional staff, from all areas, and which is, for me, it was very enlightening, because you get so many ideas, so many knowledge, which you quite often ignore. And if you bring that on the table, and you see what comes out of that people are really working an extra mile, without, there's no payment for that. It's just motivation. I think this is what considered I very special. To be open, I had a lot of fun very often in these different kind of discussions, working teams, and games that we played, like team games, for me. But also, they are still alive. We are still doing that, and we transformed that to real work in our executive education. That we built, for example, an executive education roundtable, which was a result of leading together. Yeah. And now we have a round table where all these people with interest in executive education meet, which is quite a big group. And that was a result of leading together, that we now have an institutionalized round table where we meet with faculty and other people, not only faculty, to discuss our next steps in executive education. That is one example, Karsten.
Yeah. So in other terms, there were formats kind of decided or brought up or dreamed up during these events, during this work, but then they were institutionalized in the line organization, in the regular organization, so that it's not a company in the company, kind of.
That's right. I mean, it doesn't mean that there is still a lot of things to do and quite a distance to go, because in the end, I think we need to change an emergent organization. We need to talk about the job descriptions, the hierarchy that we have, and we need to change that. Coming from a hierarchical organization to emergent organization requires then also changes in these daily descriptions and work. But the one example we have here is really that we really took that over, and that is still, for me, very important in the area that I'm responsible for, and extremely helpful to have not the whole university or parts of the university in this round table to participate in that, and because we have a lot of knowledge of delivering the programs, of what are good lecturers outside VHU, and so on and so on. And that I think is done on a lot of different areas, but it's also quite a bit to go. And that is where we currently are.
Yeah. And so you're kind of 2 years into the transformation.
Yes.
If I was a total outsider, have known WHU 2 years ago or 3 years ago and now have returned, what would be one tangible thing if I didn't know anything? If I walk around talk with WHU people, is there anything that I would notice that is different?
I think the biggest difference is that the organization, the people are motivated highly for this new vision and mission, and cooperating in an extremely nice passion that they work together, which I haven't experienced before. I'm with WHU for 18 years, had responsibilities before, and this kind of cooperation for this big vision, the North Star, is what a lot of people really have, and they are personally saying that was not what we had before.
Okay.
And that is not that perhaps everybody, because some people might, it's a lot of change triggers anxieties. It doesn't mean that all roles need to be changed. Look, I keep saying being a platform for change makers requires being change maker ourselves, but not everybody. Because we need to, we need to have a consistent system, organization. But these inspiration that people come and say, this is what we didn't have before, and this is worth doing it and going the extra mile, I haven't experienced that and that before.
Okay. And let's look at the boundaries maybe. So after 2 years of working mainly in these large group formats, what did you experience as now there's a time to change? We've hit some roadblocks, we've hit some boundaries. We need to change gears a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, what the next stage is that we, from bigger groups, we had events with 50 up to 80 people, I think. WHU people are not always the same people. And now we are going in smaller teams and groups. Let's say we come from a bigger company coaching to a smaller team coachings, where we now really need to implement these ideas. And perhaps it is even it's another big step, let's say this way, not the bigger, or it's another big step to really now implement that, which I find very necessary, because at the end we want to really change. And I think that is nicely described by these 2 loop models, where we start, there's resistance, some people need to go, these pioneers need to go ahead and show this can be what we can do. Okay, we need to a little bit adapt and adjust a little bit. This is okay, but now we need to bring it really down in the organization, and need to find a new way, and that comes even to personal levels. For example, in the CLT, the core leadership team, which is the core leadership team plus some others, we need to find and define exactly the roles, what we want to work, because the workload is extremely high. And this requires other skills than perhaps in the past, and that is what we need to reflect and to work on. And I think that has to be done in a lot of different teams. For example, in my executive education team, and in terms of this is what is the next step, working in smaller teams and in personal coaching.
Okay. And another feature that we implemented with WHU was to establish or train a group of internal coaches, transformation coaches. Johanna being the lead coach, obviously, but also other colleagues. What did you observe there, or how well is that working going forward?
So first of all, that was really a very nice and good step, and giving the roles. And I know that, for example, Johanna, she did an excellent job on I think also cooperating with you, Karsten, and moving again, and again putting energy in that, moving that a step further. And I think it's very authentic if that comes from also the organization itself. So that was extremely helpful to have that in there. For example, my personal assistant, she also took over very early a role in that process, with a lot of energy beyond her normal task. Also, I found that extremely helpful, valuable, and I think that is good. On the other hand, what we need to see is, to make it successful, we need to keep on going. And running a marathon is at kilometer 30 or 35, you get very tired. And I think we are somewhere in that stage. And now we need to again recover a bit and then go on. And that is also what we need there. But the responsibilities that people took over, I considered to be extremely helpful, because that is how an emergent system works. Not that some people, we put it on a lot of shoulders. Yeah. And these people played a very important role. And I can say I find that very successful. And I think it will help to establish WHU as this new emergent organization in the future.
And here's a message on our own behalf. If you want to up your game in terms of leadership, if you want to be more of a transformational leader, lead transformation with ease and know what you're doing, then you should check out the Advanced Management Program for Senior Professionals, AMSP, at WHU Executive Education. Just Google it. It's a very impactful program. 2 modules on site in Düsseldorf at WHU campus, lots of virtual check-ins, lots of different faculty with different backgrounds. You get a lot of different disciplines. I also have the honor to be part of the faculty. Very transformative. So highly recommended. AMSP. Check it out at WHU Executive Education. And now back to the talk with Lutz Johanning. Last question to this transformation, Lutz. And we now all have the benefit of hindsight. If you were to start it again, we go 2 years back, what would you do differently?
I think the most thing was that we always should look, and perhaps could have looked earlier, to really integrate this process with the daily work. Really ask the people, look, what are you doing, what you can do differently, and really be persistent on now implement that. Do it, try it. Yes, make mistakes, correct, do it again. Because it was pretty much clear, finally, it needs to be changed in daily work, in the daily life. And I would have said we could have started earlier with that. But, in hindsight, it's always easy to say, and I'm an entrepreneur and I like really implementing and doing, trying out, and have a failure, make a mistake, correct, and try again. Because quite often this is the learning process. And that is what I said very early to Christian, even before I joined. Christian, don't forget doing and implementing in daily work. Yeah. But it's easy to say, because you need first to say what is the idea, let's start, and for example, I don't know if that has been possible earlier. Yeah. But that is one idea.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. And Lutz, if I may, I would like to get to know you a bit more from the personal background.
Yeah.
When you were not a professor, not an entrepreneur, not a member of the CLT, but a very young guy, how was your life like?
Very young, you mean before even I studying in school?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I grew up on a farm in bit of Germany, so close to Bielefeld, that city that doesn't exist, yeah, I was more or less a farmer, the oldest son of a farmer, and I was supposed to take over the farm at one times, but this didn't happen. But this was my life, so always was very interesting. Always the whole time in psychology, which I, figured out much later that psychology is really a deep interest. But my life was really working on a farm when I was 11.
Okay.
So very young. This was normal at that time with, three siblings. Yeah, this was my life. And of course, school. No holidays, because if you have a farm, farming is typically in summer times when other people go to holidays. Yeah.
And somehow you ended up not taking over the farm. So what happened?
This was not really lucky because my parents lost the farm because of misinvestments. My father invested a lot of money in like construction firms, and the money was lost. And finally, that caused that my family lost the whole farm, which was a quite big piece of farm, and in Western standard, not in Eastern Germany. Eastern Germany, we have much bigger farming institutions or organizations today, but at that time, and was, we lost the farm as a family, which was very difficult, very sad, because it's a long tradition for a couple of hundred of years that my family was on that farm. And as I had been working on that farm since the age of 11, of course, you get very familiar with that. You like it. Sometimes you hate it because I had to work. I couldn't choose. But still, in my memories today, working on the land with your hands is something what I really still enjoy, and quite often I miss. Can say that. Yeah, but unfortunately, they lost it. So my siblings and I, we had to look for alternatives. What we did different, and obviously something reasonable came out of that. At least that is what I say.
And so that sounds like a collective trauma, I think. But everybody copes with this differently. So how did that inform your future, academic career and career choices?
Yeah, for the family, it was a trauma, and you personally need to work and need to learn how to cope with that. That led me, of course, to really reflect what I'm doing. I mean, when I did a training or internship or apprenticeship in banking, which I really hated. It was not my perspective to work in a bank. You're coming from a farm and then you work in a bank. It's just like didn't work. But knowing that we had lost the farm, it was quite a safe, secure environment. I studied business administration, I think also caused by that. Did finance, did risk management. So, and later I discovered I did risk management because I experienced so many risks in my early life. Because this was when I, as long as I can think, risk management or this disaster basically was a path to the disaster, which you couldn't avoid. And so I thought risk management can help me to avoid these risks in my personal life, which is not true. Yeah, this is a method methodological, but with this kind of method, you can't avoid personal psychological risk. It's impossible. But that was the idea, obviously. And so I studied risk management. I did my PhD in risk management. Always in between, I wanted to stop and said to my professor, no, I can't do that. I will leave. And he said, yeah, but please finish this one research paper and then you can go. So I finished that research papers. I stayed with very, very nice cooperation with my professor, then Dr. Vater. But I was never really absolutely happy in this kind of finance, in the technical, empirical finance. I can do it. I like it. But if you ask me what really came out of that, was always the interest was in psychology, how these people behave in organization, the personal behavior, how people coordinate their behavior or not coordinate their behavior in markets, in capital markets, for example. And you see that in panics on capital markets, where people start running and it's stupid, but they run. And you can't stop it by saying, look, guys, it's stupid what you're doing. Yeah, they say, thank you for this information, but I need to run. So that was always my interest. And I was able then to combine my interest with this finance and risk management work. Also, risk management is a lot of psychology involved in there. And that is what really is interesting for me.
Okay. So a career as a coping mechanism.
At the beginning, yes. Today I would say no, because it's really, I see a lot of purpose in that what I'm doing. But at the beginning, yeah, it was definitely a coping mechanism, coping with this kind of personal risk experiences. Yeah, you always have the chance to make something good out of that. And that is what I tried.
Yeah. Research is research, what they say, right? And Lutz, you did your PhD and your habilitation in Munich at LMU, and then you moved to European Business School as I think. How did that come about?
So I always was interesting in this entrepreneurial part, and I said to my spouse, look, I think I need to go and join a private university because I need to have more flexibility. And a month later or 2 months later, European Business School called and asked me, look, Lutz, can you imagine to join our school? I said yes. So that was the normal application process, and I was successful. And then I joined that school in 2002 and became normal professor in 2003 there after I have finished my habilitation in Munich. Right. And that was the process. And so then we moved from Munich to the Rheingau near to Wiesbaden. I think where you have the head office. Karsten.
Yeah, not far away from that, at least, Baden. Absolutely
far away, right?
Yeah, and then you also became part of the core leadership team at EPS, right?
Yeah, I was very early part of the core leadership team because there was a big, request for changing the program. At that time, all these schools introduced the bachelor-master degree, got rid of the old diploma, moved to bachelor-master. And, what happened there quite often was, diploma was split in two parts. The first part was bachelor and the second part is master. And that didn't work. So I was asked to take over the responsibilities, and then we built a totally new bachelor and master program. I think it was quite successful. And a couple of years later, I joined then WHU.
And but also you discovered your appetite for being an entrepreneur quite early on. So there are a couple of companies involved. It probably gets very technical, but maybe the summary of your entrepreneurial activities.
Yeah, this by the way, it derived or came out of a research project that in my habilitation I did a research project for where I collected data for asset management firms, or the data came from asset management firms, and I did some calculations on hidden costs. You invest your money and you have transparency on costs, but there are some hidden costs, and I wanted to work out what is the size of the hidden cost. And so we collected the data. It was quite an difficult process to get the data first. So, but then we processed the data, and the results were quite interesting. And then these companies said, look, guys, you need to continue, because this kind of analysis we need for regulatory and purposes, and also our clients asked for that. So then we said, okay, then let's found a company. So we founded the first company in 2004 with a research assistant, former student from Munich University, a research assistant at EPS, and with a student from the EPS. So we founded the first company. Shortly after that, a second company, because then there was a request for transparencies, a second company, and then a third, a fourth one. But this was just the entrepreneurial spirit. If you have ideas, you want to implement the ideas and bring the ideas on the table and let them grow. Was lucky to have a lot of good people around me, I think with the majority of these people, we still work together. So for more than 22 years. And, it's not that you go and start and you come up here. It's like you have a lot of crises, and good teams show up in crises. That is what I have learned.
Yeah. Okay. There was 2007, 2008 crisis. There was the apps crisis itself, right? The let's say difficulties.
But for the apps itself, you mean?
Yeah.
And the companies are all in finance. So the goal of companies is always to make capital market transparent and efficient. So with data analytics, we use data to basically analyze processes to make these processes or the results or the investment decisions more transparent in terms of risk and costs, for example. And that is what these companies do. And of course, if you are working in the financial arena, and then there is the global financial crisis, you can imagine that was quite difficult. But, a crisis is always giving you a lot of opportunities. I think that is the origin of the world. The crisis is not only bad, but gives you a lot of opportunities. That is what you learn. And then you learn that you need to have a very good team. And I think that is all these companies, basically the best we did in the crises. The best decision we did in the crisis. And the same was the apps, but I saw the crisis coming at the apps. I had the offer of WHU, and then I joined WHU before the apps turned into that crisis. But it was for me quite clear that crises might be due there. But, I was lucky in that terms that I got the offer before from WHU, and I joined WHU in 2007.
And what I've learned from talking to you, Lutz, is that you are quite good in making yourself superfluous.
Yeah, I mean, that is at least the idea. Look, I also in the companies, I consider what I really like doing is building stages, and on that stage, orchestras can play. I was never CEO of the companies. I was always supervisory board member. So always the idea was giving young people, a young team, the stage and let them perform. And they did extremely well, giving them the trust, the safety, allowing them to doing mistakes. They're very important, and know that that is part of the learning curve. And in hindsight, we always know better but what is the decision before? If you have no history, no observation before, you need to decide. I think that makes a team very successful. If you know that people are behind you, if you do mistakes and other people are behind you, who kick the ball before it enters the goal. That is what teams makes teams successful. And and that takes over the role that sometimes you can go. But then you give other people the position. And I can openly say that what I got back from all these people is unbelievable. If you give them the trust, you get it back two times more. And that inspires really an emergent organization. And that was part or is part of Leading Together, Karsten, to bring it together. And I would say I have experienced that sometimes with my companies. At apps, we have experienced that now at WHU. And that is really something what works. If you give trust and invest, you get a lot of investment back. And that is very nice to see. And then, of course, sometimes you can go because these people can say, look, Lutz, we are now CEOs. You can go. You're old. And it's good at some stage.
Yeah. That sounds really good. And I was just thinking there is a parallel between financial markets and cultural development, which I wasn't quite aware until now, which is both are complex, meaning both have similar rules that you cannot predict what is happening. You can only try little experiments. You can, prepare maybe some guardrails, but in that it's emergent. You can only see afterwards if it worked or not, right?
That's right. It's good that you say that. Never thought about that, but by saying that, I would agree. It is very complex, and it's not that there are written rules. Sometimes you need to look. You need to feel, this intuition here is good to step in because you have a good intuition for what might be causes behind that, and the causes are not transparent. You can't see them. It's subconscious. Sometimes you feel, look, I'm not very good in that. Let's other people play here. It's good when you know to step forward, but it's also good to know stepping backwards and saying, look, no, some other people are better here. And it's extremely complex. For me, it's extremely unconscious. So if you work on emotional finance, you work a lot of this unconsciousness. And in culture, a lot is written in the walls of the institution, which is not conscious knowledge. The conscious norms, the written rules, are easy to apply and to change. The unconscious norms, which is the daily working behavior without written down, that is difficult to get a hand on and then to change. And that makes the complexity for me.
And the common denominator between systems and individuals is behavior, right? So we cannot change attitude, we cannot change culture. What we can change is behavior. And from behavior, we might change attitude, we might change culture eventually with the narratives that are, building over the years.
Yeah. And Karsten, what I really like is what you said on markets. So I'm thinking about that as I talk. Or panic behavior. You have seen that in a corona crisis, for example, that in panics, typically the decisions are bad. Panic behavior is something from the old times, the Stone Age times before, but still is governing our behavior. And if you want to change that, you need to really learn and relearn. So that is what you said, behavior, and relearn the behavior. And then you can start thinking about, what are the courses? What are the attitudes behind that? From what generation did it come? Quite often you have this intergenerational handover transportation of attitudes which are not written down. I think this is what is interesting. Also for the political arena in these days, I find it extremely important.
Yeah, we see kind of a renaissance of certain behaviors that we thought were an aspect of the past, maybe.
The Renaissance, but also if you all see the political movement that we have, where we, from my perspective, fall back a little bit to what we had overcome already in terms of gender equality, for example, which I think is really the wrong way, and which is definitely not part of our WHU vision. Mission is really forward moving in terms of, no, we want to keep this, what we have generated, for example, in diversity, equity, inclusion, gender equality per se, but really understand where it came from or it comes from and how we can move it forward. And for that, you need to have this understanding. And I think this political arena, what we have globally, is something falling back because a lot of anxieties are triggered. And if people act from anxieties, it's very difficult. You can't talk with arguments. You need to talk with emotions.
Yeah.
And if you do not understand, you cannot change that. And we need to change and give a role model for how we can do it differently. Yeah. If in organizations, if in political arenas, in societies, it doesn't matter. we need to have a role model for, this is a path forward, where we know of the anxieties of people, but really get them and show a way how to change that.
And what I love about the new vision of WHU is that leadership and psychology are now an integral part of it.
Yeah.
And I did my degree, I don't know, 100 years back. That was not the case. And I somehow, I couldn't articulate it, but I felt that something was missing back then.
Something missing. I think we need that urgently. And I can say the feedback of the alums is unbelievable supportive, and we can really and bring in not only write it down on a paper, that is one thing, but making a meaningful learning journey, meaningful really implementation process, and not only talking about that, but really do it, experience that. Start with yourself, leading we, the organization, and then work on behalf of societies leading us, and making a whole learning journey out of that. And that requires these psychological, leadership skills, coaching, very important for what you do. And I think this is what we need to bring to a really learning process, and that is what people really look for, and what is necessary in that kind of world that we live in.
And let's back to you personally. When you switch on the news, whenever you do this in the morning or in the evening, how do you keep a good mood these days?
Yeah, not always easy. A little bit what I said at one stage before. Crisis for me is always the chance to change something, and and gives a lot of opportunity. As I have experienced that myself, that can work. I'm a true believer in that. Or what we have here, for example, in Europe, with geopolitical situation and risks that we face, gives us also a big chance that we wake up and now do and move. And for me, this is what I have learned in life. The glass is always half full and not half empty. And this is what I always see. There's a lot of chance in this world. Let's do it. We have the potential, and we, as WHU, want to contribute to that as a platform for change makers, as tremendous people with ours or in our school who have done that in their personal life as organizations, and let's contribute to that. I think we can't do it enough. We can do even much more, and I hope that we can inspire a lot of people and a lot of other organizations doing similar or something else in this respect.
I love
So
it.
this keeps me really being positive on always saying, look, yes, it's difficult, it's frightening, but at the same time, it's a chance, and it's a lot of fun making a chance not only visible but real.
I love this. I also love that passion that you hold when you talk about that. And last question, Lutz, what's the one thing that I haven't asked you yet that could be of interest to our listeners and viewers?
The last thing that you haven't asked,
Yes.
perhaps you asked on the personal life experience, and perhaps that was for me very important, on how you can get there. And at one stage, but that one personal experience I had, we talked about my family, but there was a personal experience. I had an uncle living in the United States, and he addressed me very early. He was a professor for religious science. And he was doing a research on an immigrant, and the immigrant person came from my neighborhood. So he asked me to go to the library and the archives to research his life. And for me, that was a trigger event, because personally, you could see a life in the middle of the 19th century, how that moved, a person who moved from a farming site in my home area to United States. And you could see that life happening. And it triggered me when I was 18 to think about, Lutz, how do you look at your life once you are 80? Looking back. And that perspective helped me a lot to reflect things, and not only to reflect, but also to do. And I think this is very important. Reflection is one part, academic part, but you always need to try out, make a mistake. And that was a big trigger point for me to really change. And so to answer your question could have been, look, what was the trigger point in your life that finally led to this kind of personal view and behavior in that life? And this trigger, that was a very important moment for me. And of course, it was a very personal relation to that uncle, whom I didn't really know before. So I got to know him by this work. Yeah. And it was funny because the library and the archive was just directly opposite my school, which was just luck. So I didn't join school. I went to the library and to the archives to basically analyze and research the life of this immigrant.
Yeah. And what it sounds like is that through this activity, you looked with more intention on your own life, right?
Yeah, that's right. Sorry. It's right, because then, if you're confronted with things, you quite often say, oh, this is the worst thing that can happen. But then you ask yourself, look, from the retrospective perspective, what does it mean? It's so small. Is it really important? No, it's not. So it helps you a lot to basically bring down the emotions and look, yeah, you might be very emotional here, but look at it from a different perspective. And then there's a totally different picture. And that is what I quite often try to do, is to look at the topic from a different perspective that helps you to understand people much better. Why do people think about that in this extreme way, which you can't understand? But if you try to understand the perspective of these people, you can understand. And that helps you much better to really solve problems instead of only curing symptoms.
And it's another example, this story that your uncle was researching, of somebody who turned a crisis into personal growth, right?
Yeah, and these stages in the mid of 19th century for a lot of people from the farming area was a big crisis, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Wow, Lutz, thank you so much for taking us on this journey through your life, both professional and personal life, and your insights, and also the analyzing together with me the Leading Together transformation at WHU. I have a very strong feeling that we will stay in touch. And
Yes.
All the best to you, and talk soon.
Thank you very much, Karsten. Thank you for this inspiring talk and questions. And yes, definitely we will stay in touch.
All the best, Lutz. Take care.
Thank you, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye. So that was Lutz. What resonated with you? What impressed you? What made you think? Do let us know and send us a message. Either comment on the platform of your choosing, or an email at leaderstalk@leadership-choices.com. We are looking very much forward to hearing from you. And now stay safe, stay healthy, and see you soon at another episode of Leaders Talk. Bye-bye.